Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen. Allincrypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another daily cryptocurrency market update. If you are finding yourself on this channel for the first time today, do make sure you check out that subscribe button because we drop an update just like this one every single day at 1 p.m. UK time to help you guys stay up to date with the latest and greatest things happening within the crypto space, but also the broader markets, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this video. As always, we have a hell of a lot to cover. You have the Coinbase hearing on Wednesday, the 17th of January. This is interesting. We're going to be going over and looking at the 4 possible outcomes for this lawsuit and how that may affect the markets. We are getting confirmation that BlackRock has been buying this dip up. We're going to be looking at fund flows for the prior week, which I think is very telling. You've got lots of people coming out and being very negative and bearish in regards to the markets. And although we are expecting Bitcoin to form that right shoulder, we think actually it's going to be a rather shallow shoulder. We're not calling for 30K. We'll show you the levels that we don't want to get run in regards to this pattern taking place that could essentially take us up to 150K Bitcoin, which is very much in line with our macro view of things. So we have a lot to get into. I want to start the video off rather interestingly, though, and actually look at an old clip from Gary Gensler when he was teaching at MIT about cryptocurrencies, blockchain, which is rather interesting, the fact that he ended up the head of the SEC shortly after that. But he said something that I think is rather interesting, and I actually think he is right on this. You know, there is this kind of phoenix from the ashes that is being born in regards to the crypto space. And crypto is the globalists' agenda, and we're going to be looking at that. But to start things off, guys, I do just want to remind people that we did go live with our Allincrypto portfolio tracker, which is 100% free to use. If you guys navigate your way over to our website, allincrypto.com, you can see it down on the left of the screen. If you navigate yourself over to the top right, you will find portfolio, and you guys can create your portfolios and track all your cryptos across multiple platforms. So do go and try that out if you haven't already. Let's start things off with a clip of Gensler talking about the crypto space and what he sees coming.
And I actually think something will happen. It's just will wow us all that we hadn't even considered. But it's in the second phase, not in this first phase of hype, disappointment. And I don't think we're anywhere near the disappointment. The disappointment takes years, and then all of a sudden, like the phoenix from the ashes, it rises up again. And it's once the distributed process is all out there and there's not nodes like a Bitcoin nodes, but nodes of users.
So rather interesting comments for someone that is certainly deemed to be so anti-crypto. And I ultimately believe that Gary Gensler is playing a game. He's ultimately doing the work of the United States government, which put a mandate in place back in 2022, where they spoke about maintaining their global authority on a kind of technology basis. And of course, we saw the kind of overthrowing of CZ. They got him on technicalities and got him out of the way, and then ultimately, subsequently approved a Bitcoin spot ETF. One of the reasons they said they weren't going to do that was because of manipulation, i.e. CZ and the power that he had. And they've put an individual in there who is very used to working with regulation. So I think that Gensler is a lot more for crypto than not. And I want to come straight over to this. Now, we've shown this on a number of occasions, and I'd posted this saying crypto is the plan. This was the Economist's article, and they were essentially talking about get ready for a world currency, and that is only facilitatable with the likes of crypto. It's why it's on the tip of everyone's tongue. You know, the World Economic Forum keep bringing it up, so on and so forth. So very, very interesting. Let's now talk about what is taking place Wednesday. It is the SEC versus Coinbase. I spoke about this in yesterday's video, and the Meta lawman is giving 4 possible outcomes. The first one is the judge denies Coinbase's motion to dismiss. This means the bar's set very low for the SEC, and essentially you'll end up in a Ripple-esque continuation of the lawsuit. The second one is the judge grants Coinbase's motion with prejudice. This means the entire case is dismissed. This would be massive. Rather interestingly, when you look at the Coinbase chart, it's primed for a bounce. Coinbase made our target that we had for it in 2023, perfectly sold off from then. And in fact, I'll just show you that as we go through this because it is all very, very relevant. If we pull up Coinbase rather quickly, you can see that we were looking at a smaller head and shoulders, which is identifiable down here with this as the neckline. You can see the target that we had for that was $184. Look at where we ran into. Look at where we perfectly sold off. That's now setting up a broader head and shoulders. And this is the neckline in the same manner that you sold off here. It's doing the same thing here after making a target, and ultimately is likely to bounce. And I think that's going to come on Wednesday. We've also been looking at the fact that despite us expecting the right shoulder for Bitcoin to play out, altcoins are actually likely going to do better than Bitcoin based on others' dominance and even BTC dominance, which looks to be coming out of its uptrend and starting to break market structure, which we will cover when we get onto the charts. But to go back to the outcomes, you can see that the third option is the judge grants motion without prejudice. The SEC gets a chance to amend the complaint to cure deficiencies cited by the judge. So that is a kind of prolongation of the whole thing. And then option 4 is the judge grants motion with respect to the claims relating to the 13 crypto tokens. So the motion to dismiss the case essentially, but denies with respect to the staking services. So the idea that these staking offerings that these exchanges are facilitating, that constitutes as an investment contract, not necessarily the altcoins themselves, which would actually very perfectly fit in with things like others' dominance, which is a chart that's played out wonderfully for us, that essentially, this was a smaller head and shoulders that led to markets rhyme. You see this structure all over the place. It looks like what you used to draw on a whiteboard as a kid. You can see the smaller head and shoulders took us to a neckline of a bigger head and shoulders, and now we've actually broken out of that, came back for a retest perfectly, which we were looking at a bounce around, and now we're likely to see continuation. I think there's going to be a little bit of whatever takes place on Wednesday kicking into that and fulfilling it. Also, if we look at Bitcoin dominance, which suggests altcoins are going to do quite well against Bitcoin, I think this is broken out of its uptrend. Very, very steep uptrend. You've now put in kind of 3 sort of peaks, marginally higher high. You'll probably have a bullish divergence on that as well if I do have the RSI up. Yes, you do. And ultimately, I think you're going to get a correction for Bitcoin dominance, and altcoins are going to do quite well. So despite us expecting Bitcoin to have a period of rest, sideways action, congestion, stall box, whatever you want to call it, we think altcoins are actually going to do quite well during this time period. There are also rumors. And according to this article, BlackRock scoops up 11,500 BTC during the dip as an ETF leads the pack. So BlackRock, by February the 1st, will become they'll become a bigger Bitcoin holder than the likes of MicroStrategy. And this is how these institutions work. They will, just in the same way they manipulate the stock market and they push their agendas through being the largest stockholder, they'll do a similar thing for Bitcoin. And they'll do a similar thing when we have altcoin ETFs where there are governance systems in place. And we've already seen whales completely control and manipulate the governance systems. I now want to dive over to something that I think a lot more people should pay attention to, and that is CoinShares Digital Asset Fund Flows Weekly Report. I always check this as one of the first things I do on a Monday morning. US $1.1 billion inflows last week as the US ETF began trading. Not a record though. So you can see the prior inflows and this engulfing massive candle. And actually, one reason we had such a negative close on Friday was due to the arbitrage trade being taken and closed on Grayscale's trust. There was still a discount. It was a very obvious thing. We traded the discount when it was a lot more wide. And ultimately, once the ETF was approved, it gave people the option to then cash out, crystallize that gain, and then have that money to float. So you can see Grayscale saw quite a lot of outflows. Bitcoin, of course, the main beneficiary. And the interesting thing about the future that we are moving towards is we are going to end up with altcoin ETFs. And I don't really understand. Every dip that Bitcoin's had since January when we got into the markets, 2023, beautiful call. The same actors have came out and now they're all calling for 30K. They're all calling for, disaster and altcoins to sell off. And what we're looking at technically simply just doesn't suggest that at all. Bitcoin also against other assets may want to take a bit more of a break and is kind of doing a similar thing to what it's doing on the charts. And we should probably bring the charts up to talk about Bitcoin and the kind of plan that we have in place. So if we go over to our Bitcoin chart, you can see smaller head and shoulders, perfect target met. Look at where you're congesting. We're now in this kind of period of setting up a right shoulder. And I don't think that this is going to run the left shoulder, which is all the way down at 32K. I personally think, yes, okay, I can see you going into the high 30s, potentially. But I think this is going to be a lot more shallow and short-lived than many people are expecting. Why people come out and bet against the trend every single time there's a little bit of a stall is beyond me. It just simply doesn't make sense. And I think that people are very news-driven in regards to predicting things like 30K altcoins to sell off to the degree that they're talking about. When we look at others, when we look at Bitcoin dominance, it doesn't suggest that altcoins are going to get hit harder than Bitcoin. Maybe some smaller ones if you did venture into the kind of top end of the 30K range. I think this is going to be a lot more of a shallow head and shoulders than most people are expecting. You know, the bull market, as far as we're concerned, is here. Not just for crypto, you've broken out. And this is ultimately how markets work, ladies and gentlemen. In the same way that we showed you others' dominance that had the smaller head and shoulder and now setting up a bigger head and shoulder, the same thing is going to occur for the likes of Bitcoin. And also Coinbase had a similar thing and others had a similar thing. So we're bulls, and we think this is going to be a lot more short-lived. And actually, this is accumulation period for us. You know, if you are still DCAing, if you are still buying crypto, then I don't think it's too much of a bad time at all. So there's no reason to be pessimistic, I think, on the crypto space. And for headlines like 30K sub incoming, it just doesn't make sense when you look at the charts, and we need that to play out for you know, we need certain levels to be taken for that to even be on the cards. And I don't think it's there yet. I think it's very premature, but we are looking at potential of 150K Bitcoin, perhaps this year. There's been a huge buzz, BlackRock buying the dip up, the Coinbase lawsuit, which when we look at others' dominance and the suggestion that altcoins are going to do quite well against Bitcoin, actually this lawsuit, I think, and the hearing that comes on Wednesday could play a pivotal role in that. So yeah, that is really all we've got for you in this video, guys. A lot going on this week. We'll keep you up to date on a daily basis. So if you're not already a subscriber, do consider becoming one. And on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Don't forget to check out our Patreon. There's a link in the description to join my private group. And I will see you all in the next YouTube video. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a wonderful Monday, and I'll catch you all in the next one.